Today I'm going to give you my rundown of the top 10 mods for the Nissan 370Z, not just for the Nismo that I'm driving right now, but also for the base model, because in 2009 I bought myself a brand new 370Z with the GT pack and I loved that car. I had a long list of mods that I wanted to do, but unfortunately circumstances changed and I just didn't have the money to do the modifications that I wanted. Nearly 10 years later, things changed and I was able to afford to do those modifications, but I also had enough money to upgrade to the Nismo. And having seen the 2015 Plus or V2 Nismo, I thought that is the car that has to be my starting point. It is so close to what I'd want anyway. I would just have so much less to do. And of course I was wrong, because I actually took most of the items on my original shopping list for the base model 370Z and applied those mods to this. Now, for those of you who've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I've already made a video on my top 10 mods for the 370Z. However, that was a couple of years ago and a few things have moved on with the car, and the quality of my videos has moved on a bit since then. Trust me, things have improved. And one of the reasons why my videos weren't quite as good is because I didn't have this. This is the Insta360 Ace Pro. I've used the Ace Pro to shoot everything you've seen so far, including the beauty shots of the 370Z in the opening to this video. I've been using its D-Warp setting with clarity zoom and flow state stabilization, which, together with its 1/1.3-inch 8K sensor and lens co-engineered with Leica, delivers a clear 4K recording without the fisheye effect. Switch off D-Warp and clarity zoom and you still get nice wide-angle shots with the fisheye effect for that greater sense of speed if you want it. Its flip-out screen makes it versatile for action shots, POV and in-car shots, or even vlogging. With this level of stabilization and the horizon lock, it gives you a buttery smooth image, even though you're walking, bouncing up and down. And by the way, this is the audio coming through the camera. And when you want to venture out at night, its pure video mode captures incredibly clear night shots. It would take a whole video to cover all its features, so for today, I hope you enjoyed the opening as well as the in-car and on-board driving shots when I'm back out on the road a little later in this video. Of course, a special thank you to Insta360 for sending me the Ace Pro and for sponsoring this video. Now, on to the first of 3 categories of mods for the 370Z. So let's start with some aesthetic upgrades first, including the basics like the roof and some paint details, but also the carbon fiber body kit I have on this car and some options that you might have too. So as standard, these cars come with a color-coded roof. I personally felt that that was just a bit too much white on this car, so I decided to wrap it in a gloss black finish. Now, you can actually get a carbon cap for this, so if you want a carbon fiber look on your roof, but I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to add too much bulk to the surface of the roof. I didn't want it to stick up too much. I wanted to keep it as sleek and as flowing as possible. I didn't want that extra, tiny little extra lip that you get with the carbon roof caps, but of course, each to their own. You might prefer it. And this I had done by a company called CarWrap24. They turned the job around really quickly for me because the previous wrap had kind of deteriorated after a few years, had a few stone chips on the leading edge of the roof, and it just needed to be refreshed. So another option would be to tint your rear window. Personally, I decided not to go for that because when I look in my rear view mirror at night, I want to have as clear a view as possible. Now, mod number 2 is quite specific to the Nismo. On the Nismo, you've got these areas here that are kind of painted in a plastic looking textured black paint, and personally I didn't like it. So what I had done is I had this matched up to the paint here. Now, big mistake that I've made is that I didn't PPF these sections here, and I've already got some stone chips which show up pretty badly, although they did show up pretty badly on the black textured paint as well. Anyway, I'm gonna have to get this redone, definitely gonna PPF it next time.
The bar raising, we keep moving it up. Ain't no surprises here, they knew it was us.
Now, the updates to the version 2 Nismo exterior over the standard car I felt were quite significant in their impact, but actually were limited to a front bumper, side skirts, and a rear bumper and the rear spoiler. The front headlights just had black inside to it. They had black wing mirrors. Otherwise, it was largely the same. But the front bumper design sharpened up the edges, which I think were too soft on the original 370Z. The side skirts just gave it that extra edge on the side, and the rear bumper just has this amazing line to it. The arch kind of goes over and then flattens. You know, that aside, I still felt that the car needed a little something, and I wanted to make it my own, so I added the carbon signal side blade, the 3-piece front splitter, and the Fly One rear diffuser valance. The rear lip on here, that's from a company called Yat in Thailand, and I had the carbon fiber B pillars and the mirror cap covers from Evo R. To be honest, I wasn't really a big fan of the quality of those. I'm running them for now, but I think I'm going to update them at some point. There's endless front lips, side skirts, rear diffusers, and full body kits for the standard 370Z, so shop around for something that matches your taste. Now, everything else I talk about in this video works whether you have the standard Z or the Nismo. And my son bought me these badges, these silver Z badges with the 370Z design on them. And I've looked high and low to get replacements for these, and I couldn't find them anywhere. So if you found them, please let me know where in the comments below. Now, the next update in terms of looks was its ride height. Now, I've achieved the ride height on this using the KW V3 coilovers, and I have to say, I cannot fault them. They are absolutely fantastic. Now, the original suspension on the Nismos is really good, but on the standard 370, which I had before, I felt that it wasn't quite up to scratch. Not only was it too high, it was just a little bit too soft for my preferences. I like a slightly edgier driving experience, and the Nismo gave me that, but the KW V3s give me that even more because I've been able to just set up the damping rates to my preferences. The Nismo sits about 10 mil lower than the stock car. This is a further 25 to 30 mil lower again. And because the splitter now makes the front even lower, to protect it, I chose the KW HLS2 hydraulic front lift, which has saved my front splitter more than once already. It uses a compact hydraulic pump stealth fitted in the boot by Abbey Motorsport, with a button fitted in place of the door lock activation light cover for that OEM look. You might prefer a less expensive option, which would be an air cup based system. However, with that, the compromise is a very loud compressor and an air tank that takes up quite a lot more space in your boot. But the other thing that I've changed aesthetically is where the wheels are positioned. I've actually got spacers on this. I ended up going with 20mm spacers on the front and 15s on the rear. Due to the lip on the arches of the Nismo, it's very hard to get the clearance that you need. And the only way around that was going to be adding camber, or taking it away, more negative camber. And I didn't really want to do that. So that's why I'm running the 15s at the rear. I talk about that extensively in another video, including some of the dilemmas and issues that I faced along the way. And if you want to see that, check out the link in the description. But now I think it's time to jump in the car, talk about the handling, and then onto the performance and the ECUTek tuning system. Oh my God. Honestly, the handling on this car now is next level. I mean, when you get the Nismo, it already has incredible handling. It is a well set up car, don't get me wrong. But the KW V3s and lowering the center of gravity a little bit really make a difference to the car. Now, lowering this car, originally, I had it slammed way too low. It scraped a little bit. Oh! Let's just say it wasn't that sensible. It was just a bit too low. But then when I wanted to put the front splitter on, I decided to raise the ride height just a little bit, and that I actually think made the car overall feel a bit better. But it's still considerably lower than the standard car and lower again than the Nismo. I've also made some adjustments to the damper settings. When you get the KWs, they allow you to adjust the bump and the rebound. So the bump is the compression and the rebound is the extension of the suspension. And that allows you to set your suspension up so that it either is a bit more compliant with the road or maybe a little bit more responsive, if you like. I like the suspension where it is now, which is around 2 clicks stiffer than the standard settings you get from KW. It just feels incredible. For me, this car was all about excitement in the corners. it's that lower center of gravity that you get from lowering the car that just gives you that slight extra edge in the corners that I think makes all the difference over the standard Nismo. Next up, I put the spacers on, and the effect that these have had on the handling has been both positive and negative. On the positive front, mid-corner, the grip you feel you've got in this car is incredible. It just goes around the bends like it's not even trying. I absolutely love it. There's only a few cars that I think actually beat this in the corners in terms of sports cars, and you're getting into GT4 RS territory before you have this noticeable improvement over the handling on this car. And if you've seen some of the other cars I've driven over on my other channel with my friend James, JM and Friends, then you'll know that I've driven a fair number of different sports cars. Honestly, this is one of the best for me. I just absolutely love it. So the upside of the spacers is that they push the track of the car slightly further out, which means that mid-corner, you've just got a slightly flatter turn, slightly more grip. It loads up the outside really nicely, and the geo setup I've got from Abbey Motorsport on this obviously helps with that. The downside is that that also puts a little bit extra load on your suspension. So you will expect for the lifespan of your suspension to be shortened slightly. Not dramatically, but bear it in mind. The other downside of the spacers is that it does make the car more sensitive to tram lining, particularly on motorways or highways if you're in America. It just means that you've got to do a little bit more work with the steering when you're driving this car. It kind of feels like it's set up to be a little edgier. I quite enjoy that, if I'm honest. It makes me feel engaged and involved. One of my favourite motorway journeys ever was actually in a Caterham, and that thing is just insane. The steering on that is phenomenal, and you have to put in quite a bit of work just to keep the car going in a straight line. And it's just got that race car for the road feel. I know it's totally unnecessary, but it's just part of that experience. I think that about sums it up for ride and handling. Let's move on to performance. Right, first things first, let's talk about the basics. The sound. When you first get a 370Z from factory, the sound of this thing is just too quiet. My son and I used to joke that it sounds like an EV. I mean, it's not that bad, but it was pretty bad. So one of the first things that I did was try to resolve the sound of the car and, of course, hopefully increase the flow of the exhaust, which will ultimately give us some more performance, or at least allow us to unlock more performance. So I went for the Tarmac Sportz short tails. These are a muffler replacement with some resonated pipes that I think just bring the sound of the car out in a really, really nice way. The stock cats are really quite restrictive, and for me, the sound of the standard exhaust with the short tails is now, of course, that sound wasn't quite enough for me, so I went even further and added the Sportz cats. This allows for more flow through the cats rather than the level of restriction you get with the stock version, the stock equivalent. And this also means that the tuner can really then start to take advantage of the increased gas flow that they're achieving. Now, improving the flow of gases out of the engine is one thing, but you also need to improve the flow of air into the engine.
Next move gotta be the best. Checks is not chess. I ain't living to impress. Yes.
Now, I looked at a few different options for this. My first choice was originally a cold air intake. Now, you want cold air going into the engine because cold air is denser, so you have more oxygen in it, and therefore it combusts better. The cold air intake puts a cone filter just behind your front bumper, so it's well outside the engine bay, so it's pulling in more cold air. However, the downside of many of the systems that you could get at the time were that the piping that would run into the engine bay was made of metal. So as long as it had cold air flowing over it, you'd be fine. But if you got stuck in traffic for a little bit, then it would suffer from something called heat soak. The metal itself would get hot, that would heat up the air inside the intake. If you were using this solely on track, sure, cold air intake would be fine. But if you want to use it in multiple applications like on the road, then what you'll find is as soon as you're stuck in traffic or driving slowly for a while, then essentially all of that power that you got on the dyno is no longer there. So Abbey Motorsport recommended that we go with the drop-in air filters rather than the more expensive cold air intakes. However, since then, another cold air intake has come onto the market, which has carbon fiber and silicone piping. Now that is going to be less susceptible to heat soak, so I think that might be one worth checking out. So all that's left to do is tune it.
I'm unstoppable. Hard work all day. Go hard always. I'm unstoppable.
Now that we've got air flowing more freely into the engine and exhaust gases flowing more freely out of the engine, we can now take advantage of that with some tuning, thanks to the help of Abbey Motorsport. Now the base model of the Nismo version in the UK comes with 344 PS or 339 horsepower. The US equivalent is quoted with 350, and I think that is simply down to emissions. So Abbey Motorsport were able to take the baseline that we took off the dyno and add another 30 horsepower on top. And given that the base power of this car at the crank is 339 horsepower, and we added 30, that takes it up to 369. And I like to just say, well, let's just round it up by 1 to 370. I'm sure you can figure out why.
This is what I was made to do. It's near, I'ma see it through. They all look to me. Ain't got no choice but to succeed.
Now the other thing Abbey Motorsport did was they changed the throttle map. Now the standard throttle map on these is quite progressive. What I mean by that is, let's say you press the throttle pedal by around 10%, the car only gives you 5% of throttle change. And the reason for that is, when you're at lower RPMs, you're often in traffic, so it tries to give you a little bit more pedal to play with so that the car isn't jerky when you're trying to pull away. Now, I don't like that. I prefer to modulate the throttle myself, and I always like that more linear experience from a cable-based throttle pedal. Obviously, these are fly-by-wire, so I had them change it. This actually makes the car feel more aggressive, feel more fast, because you're just putting a lot less throttle in that first half of the throttle pedal to get the same level of response. That on its own is worth doing, simply for the added sense of speed that it gives you, the sense of power. And because Abbey Motorsport used the ECUTek system, which was first found on GTRs, and then they later realised could also work on 370Zs with a little bit of tweaking, you end up with 4 separate engine maps selectable from your steering wheel. By pressing and holding the cruise control cancel button, that puts it into map switching mode. It changes the dials on your rev counter, and you use the toggle switch on your right thumb to change what map you want. Press the cancel button once more to select it, and you're in a new map. So some of you might be thinking, oh, does that interfere with the cruise control? No, not at all, because the cancel button's not doing anything when you don't have cruise control enabled. So if you've cancelled cruise control, then the button mode changes.
I roll in and roll out, skate on the beat like a roll bounce. No, I got a rubber for the whole town, got a foot up on the gas, never slow down.
So what do they put on these 4 separate maps? Well, I've got on map 1, very, very little change at all. It's just the extra power and that's it. Map number 2 introduces some variable traction control. So when you disable the traction control of the car, it allows you to adjust the level of traction control from the steering. Map number 3, I'm just going to call that the spicy map, and we'll leave it at that. And map number 4 is essentially a valet map. So if you're handing your car over to someone that you don't fully trust, essentially it limits the RPMs to 4,000, so they can't just sit there revving the living daylights out of your car. Map number 4 also acts as a lower octane map. So for me, I've got that set to a 95 octane because the standard fuel on these cars is 98. Please tell me you've never put anything less than 98 in your 370Z. The tune has been set up specifically to cope with 95 without causing any problems. And that's come in handy a few times for me, where I've been out in the middle of nowhere and I just couldn't find anywhere that sold the fuel that I needed. So I just put it into map 4, put some 95 in. That got me to the next fuel station that actually had 98 plus fuel, and then I was good to go. Now, another cool thing about the ECUTek system is you can also get the ECUTek Connect OBD adapter, which allows you to connect your phone or tablet to your car, clear down codes, see what codes you've got, and also monitor certain performance data about your car. And it also allows you to do some data logging on your car. So if you've got an issue, you can do some data logging with the tool, email the file off to your tuner, they can analyze it and see what potentially might be wrong, and then send you a map back that you can then load straight onto your car from within the app. The features on the ECUTek system are so rich, I think that's worthy of another video, and I do have one, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. So one bonus mod for you, and that is an oil cooler. If you're taking these cars on track, you're gonna need one, and that's because they do get quite hot quite quickly. Unfortunately, it's just a characteristic of the car, so an oil cooler will help you just be able to put in quite a few more laps before you have to come in just to let the car cool off. On the road, generally you'll be fine. Maybe in a hot country if you're doing some fast road, say if you're in LA and you're driving the Angel Crest Highway. Trust me, my son's driven that road, and based on what I saw, you'll need one. Speaking of things that we need, I want to say a huge thank you to Insta360 for sending me the Ace Pro that you're watching me on right now. It's so versatile in all the different shots it can get. If you're thinking about getting an Ace Pro, please do so via the link in the description. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, choose notifications on all videos, and I'll see you next time on Sports and Touring.